Hey at 10, it was absolutely lovely to see you last week, most of you in school, in person, in real life, finally, which was really great. It's been far too long and was really nice to have a bit of a catch up and just see you all. I've definitely missed you all loads, so it was great to have a catch up and I look forward to doing it again. Oh, it's next week now, not too long away at all. So that will be fantastic to have a last final session of the year. If you've got anything particular that you think would be really nice to cover, please do let me know. Now, before we crack on with today's lesson, which is going to be doing a little bit more on your compositions on Note Flight, just to let you know, we are doing another virtual live lounge. You guys were the absolute highlight of the last virtual live lounge. All of our amazing submissions from our Year 10 class, which is brilliant. So it'd be really good to have some more. If you want to do another one, if you did one last time and you'd like to do another one, that would be amazing. If you didn't do one for the last one, I'd love to have you getting involved in this one. Same deal, just send me a video to d.pate@bristolfreeschool.org.uk and I'll put them all together. It's going to be played live on YouTube at the last Thursday of term, so 16th at 7 p.m. So 16th of July, 7 p.m. and it'd be really good to have you guys involved. Send me some videos. I look forward to putting it all together for a big kind of final celebration to end the year. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at our songs that we've been making on Note Flight, and this is really good composition practice for whatever compositions you go on to do as part of your coursework next year. I have had some information about what it is likely going to be happening in your exams next year, and it's likely that one of the changes they make to the coursework is that you might not have to submit two pieces, you might be just submitting one. So what that means is that one composition has got to be a really good one, which I know it will be, and we'll talk much more about in lessons when what that involves. But this is a really good practice, and actually what you do on this composition, you could even use part of this in your submission next year if you really like it. So it's good practice. So let's just have a quick reminder of what you've done so far. What you've done so far is you've created your initial idea. You then built up your initial idea into, there we go, so my initial idea for my Hawkeye theme in bar 1 was da 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 da, da 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 da. And then I kind of sequenced it, repeated it in bar 2. Da, 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 da. Then I had a new idea, da, 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 and then a finishing point with a cadence, da, 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 da. And that was my imperfect cadence to finish. Bars 5 to 8 was just an exact repeat. There we go, exactly the same, but this time ending on a tonic chord on a perfect cadence, da 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 da, to finish it. Then the next section was bars 9 to 12, which was a new idea, a new 4-bar idea, and again this time actually following the same structure. Firstly with an initial idea, da 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 da, then a sequence of it, da 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 da, then new idea with big leaps, da 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 da. In my case, it doesn't have to have big leaps. And then last bar, heavily using the dominant chord. In my case, I'm in the key of C, so that's G, da 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 da. And then it goes back to bars 13 to 16, which is exactly the same as bars 5 to 8, making sure that I finish on a big tonic note, which in this case is C. So that's your melody. If you haven't quite finished your melody yet, go back to the first lesson and have a look at it. Then what we did was we harmonized it. We used chords and just sort of plonked them underneath our melody to harmonize it, remembering that for each point in the melody we were looking at what the notes are in the bar and what chord would fit with those notes underneath, mostly using chords 1, 4 and 5, but also using some secondary chords like 3, 6 and 2 as well. So if you haven't done that yet, do go back to the second lesson on this, which was all about how to harmonize it. It's quite a detailed video talking through it, but if you follow those steps really carefully, then you can create an awesome sounding melody. Now today we're going to look at how to, I've talked a bit about plonking the chords in, okay? I wasn't really interested in how the chords sounded for now in terms of how they were played, just like pop them in so we can hear whether they work. Today we're going to talk about actually how to create the accompaniment for your piece of music, because having just held chords all the time is fine, it's all well and good, but actually something that has a bit more interest to it will involve different rhythms and will involve different ways of playing those chords. So the first thing to consider is about your chord inversions. Now what that means is our chords so far, most of us has put them in what's called root position. That means this chord that you can see here that I'm wiggling my mouse around is a C chord, and it's got C, E and G in the bass clef. Okay, this would be the bass clef. So C, E, G, there we go. That's our C chord. Now you could spell that chord in a slightly different way. You could spell it E, G, C. It would still have the same notes in it, but it would just be a different order. Why would you want to do that? Well, if I go over to Noteflight now and show you an example in the start of my theme here, ignore the rhythms for now. What I've got is a C chord just there. Let's turn that up a bit so you can hear it. There we go. So there's my C chord, and then it jumps to this F chord. There we go, there's my F chord. And you'll see that it's quite a big jump to get to the C to the F chord. To make that feel a little bit smoother, I could rearrange the order of these notes. So this top note here is a C, because F chord contains F, A and C. Instead of having that chord leap all the way up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this C and I'm going to move it down an octave to a C below. There's actually on Noteflight a little button to do that as well if you want to. This button here is up an octave or down an octave, and you'll see it if I click on that. There you go, put it back to normal, or down an octave. There we go. Now that there is still an F chord, because it's F, A, C, but I've just moved it around so that the top note is actually now at the bottom. We call that a chord inversion. Technically this is a second inversion. Root position is where the F is at the bottom. First inversion is where the middle note, the A, is at the bottom, and second inversion is where the top note, the C, is at the bottom. And what that means is that those chords flow so much nicer together, because rather than jumping all the way over to the other side of the keyboard, it's right next to it. I'm just going to go to my piano and play it for you. Here's my C chord, then up to my F chord. That was with a jump. If I change that to second inversion, it sounds like this. The notes are just closer together. It makes what's called better voice leading. It just sounds better. So, first thing to do before you add any rhythm to your melody is just go through all the chords that you plonked in last lesson and decide which inversion you're going to put those chords in to make sure that they flow together nicely. Now, the next stage is what I'm calling accompaniment style. Okay, accompaniment style is the way that you play those chords. I've put a few examples here. Firstly, this is the classic trusty semi-breve. This just means hold down a C chord for the whole bar. Now there's a real place for that and you can use that really effectively, but if it's just that, it can get a little bit boring. So this first bar with a plonked C chord in there might sound like underneath my da 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 da, my piano is going da 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 da. Okay, it's all right, it's just held down. Now let's have a look at my other example, which is one chord per beat. I've turned that C chord into 4 C chords, each a crotchet long. That just means that they're played more often. So instead, it sounds like this. Da 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 da, sorry. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. Okay, so the piano chords are played one chord per beat. It gives it a bit more rhythmic movement. Here's some other accompaniment styles you can try. You could try dotted rhythms. Dotted rhythms are quite driving forward. It's like da 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 da. Okay, so dotted rhythms can sound quite nice and give it a bit of rhythm. You could try some semiquavers. I've called them a bit much because that, what I've written there, would probably sound a bit crazy because it's got such quick rhythms, but using some semiquavers can be a bit of an experiment. You could try a arpeggio in the accompaniment. What that means is instead of the C chord just being C, E, G on top of each other, I've split up the notes so it goes C, then E, then G, then back to E again. That would sound like this. Instead of all together, it would go. Okay, you could even do that C chord over multiple octaves like this example here, which I've called a massive arpeggio because it goes C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G. There we go, so it's got a huge arpeggio going over a long space. I've called this the umcha. Umcha means that you have the bass note and then the rest of the chord, a bit like this. So this is written as, which can sound quite kind of playful and nice, offbeat chords. And then I've used this here as an example of fanfare-like moving inversions. These are all C chords, but I've just moved the position of the notes. This is a C chord, and then a C chord with a C at the top in first inversion, then a C chord with the G at the bottom, which is in second inversion, which can sound almost quite like a fanfare. So there's some different examples of how you could write those chords. Here's how that might look if you've just written for piano, okay, if you've just written for one instrument. This is what I've done on my example Hawkeye theme. Here we go, and you'll see that my accompaniment, this is the first time I'm going to show you this, which is using just for one instrument for piano. I think most of you have written for multiple instruments, which gives you even more possibilities, which I'll show you in a second. Just with one instrument, the piano, I've got my chords in the left hand and my tune in the right hand, and I've tried to add some dotted accompaniment in here to make it sound like it's kind of got a bit of pace to it, to give it a driving rhythm. There's a faster harmonic rhythm at this point, so I've changed it to just crotchet rhythms. When I go to this middle section, the B section, I've used that umpa style, umpa, broken chord accompaniment that I just did there. And because it's quavers, it makes it feel a bit faster, and then I go back to the dotted rhythm. Let's just have a listen to that so you can see how that sounds. Here is my Hawkeye theme with its for piano. Here we go. Oh, probably go from the start. Here we go. There's this umpa. And there we go. That could be a finished piece there because it's fully harmonized with the chords that fit correctly underneath, because I know that they fit the notes on top. And I've added a bit of rhythm to those chords, changing the accompaniment style to just give it a bit more rhythmic interest. That sounds like a complete piece. There's more that I could do though, and that is because at the moment I've just written this out for one instrument, the piano. And what you might notice is that having just all the chords in the left hand can sometimes feel a bit heavy. Some of these chords are quite low on the piano, like this one. And they can just sound a little bit, I find them a bit muddy when they're that low. You know, those notes don't blend together quite as well when they're really low. So this is the advantage of, and this is what many of you have done, actually writing your tune for more than one instrument. Here's one more example of my Hawkeye theme, this time written out for two instruments. The violin is taking the main melody now. So I've just copied and pasted that onto a new instrument part. And you can add a new instrument by going to, let's move my window down a little bit, this instrument panel just here, which will bring them up on the side. There we go, and I've added a new instrument. Instead, if you want to change the order of the instruments, you can click and drag them, and having the solo instrument on top definitely helps. And now my piano has actually got two hands and something that it can, so it can kind of change the way that it uses that accompaniment because it's like freed up a space. That means what I've done is I've actually put the chords in the right hand now. I copied and pasted them, and I used that octave up button up here to move them up an octave. So they didn't sound quite as murky. Remember down here, they were all really low and quite murky. Copied and pasted it, put it here. I've kept actually the same rhythms as I did before. I've just moved it up. And then I've got this free left hand. What can I do with the left hand? Well, in music, the left hand usually plays a bass line. And the bass line is usually going to be a little bit simpler, perhaps, rhythmically than what the chords are doing. In some cases, depends on your style. But in my case, it will be. So what I've done is in my first bar of music after the upbeats here, my dotted rhythms are being played in the right hand, that's playing the chords, and my left hand is just holding down the root note, playing a C. There we go. Then when it goes to this second bar, there's two different chords in this bar. There's the F chord and then there's the C chord, and I've given them their nice dotted rhythms to make them sound quite, give them a bit of energy. And then I've just put the root notes F, C in the left hand part. the bass and what you do in the left hand is really important in music because it supports the harmony. If you were to put a different note, like you can put the third in the bass, but you have to be careful, and the fifth in the bass can sometimes have a particular effect which you need to be very careful with. So as a rule of thumb, I would say put the root in the bass, okay? Put the root of the note in the bass because it really supports that harmony and it makes the harmony really clear. So the bass line that I've created underneath my chords is basically just playing the root notes of all the chords, and all I've done is put them underneath. I've done a couple of extra bits. You'll see here what I've done is I've used the root of the chord, which is an A minor chord like the chord above, and then I've used the third of the chord to walk me up to that G there. So I've actually added in an extra note here rather than having it as a held note, but it is another chord note. That's really important. So you can add in extra notes to create another chord note. I've copied and pasted that exactly for my second section. When I get into my B section, if you remember in my original version for just piano, I had this umpa thing where I played the root note and then the chords afterwards, or the rest of the chord afterwards. What I've done here is I've spread it over two hands actually, so I play my root note in the left hand and then the rest of the chord in the right hand with a gap just before it, so it'll still create that umcha style rhythm. So actually what you're getting here is very similar to what we had in the previous one. The rhythms are the same. The main difference is I've put the chord higher, up an octave, to make the chord sound less murky in the right hand of the piano, and in the left hand I've created this new bass line using the root notes from the chords. Let's have a listen and see what it sounds like. Here we go. I thought the violin would be good as well because I thought for an archer, someone with arrows, violins have a bow. That was literally my thinking. There you go. Violins have a bow, like a bow and arrow. So let's make it a violin. Right, let's have a listen. Here we go. Oh, again. Oh, let's go from the beginning. Here we go. Take two. There we go. Of course, the sounds on Note Flight sound totally naff, and that is just the way it goes, unfortunately. But what I've created here is really, this is a piece of music that I'd want to play in real life, or I'd want to give to a violin player and a piano player and get them to actually perform it and to hear it live. I will, after we've done this, actually show you how we can get some proper, nice sounding recordings of these pieces using virtual instruments, not these horrible Note Flight sounds. So anyway, so that's your lesson today. What I want you to do today is to continue your theme, looking at the accompaniment style and thinking about the rhythm of what you play. Ideally doing it for piano and a solo instrument, and then thinking about creating a bass line for the piano in the left hand. And then as ever, if you go to the download button at the top here, save it as a PDF and an MP3 to send it to me so I can have a listen. And what I've done so far is I've been sending little voice clips to each of you with some feedback. If you haven't already had that from me, please do nudge me because I may have missed one or two that got sent in a bit late. So ask for some feedback. Send me by the end of the week your final composition. I will give you some more feedback, and next week we'll look at improvements and finishing it off. All right? Good luck. I can't wait to hear your finished things. And if you are struggling, because this is hard composition, okay? If you are struggling, if you're finding it difficult, please do email me. One or two of you have emailed me over the week and just said, here's what I've got so far. I'm completely stuck. I don't know what to do with this bar. And I've sent you some feedback. So you're welcome to talk to me throughout the week. You know, you don't have to wait until submission. Send me some questions. Send me what you've done. I'm happy to give you feedback. All right. Good luck.